I'm so glad there's a countdown. Hey, Alyssa. Hi, everybody. Oh, I already given Alyssa fair warning that she might be carrying the show today. I have a sinus infection to beat all sinus infections. Hey, before we start, anybody that's new here, we don't know you're here unless you make a comment. So please comment, let us know where you're at. Talk amongst each other, anything you want to do, ask questions. Hey, Chris, I've never
Hey,
asked you, what do you do when you have a live show and you have a sinus infection? I'm on Dayquil and hot tea. Hi, Asher. Hey, Karen Henson. She's from Idaho and California. So she's straddling two states. Susanna, thank you for showing up.
Susanna. Hey.
So, hey, so yes, I've given Alyssa fair warning. I'm on Dayquil, tea, have a sinus infection. So if I start to sound loopy, she needs to interrupt me and carry the show. Hey, Nathan. So we do have Alyssa. So, Alyssa, share who you are
Yes.
and enough about me.
I am Elisa Southall, and I am the founder of A People Partner LLC. I do HR consulting. I also I provide support to companies in their recruitment efforts. And then for free, I help job seekers career coach, upskill, and find employment. And so that is free because I'm very passionate about making sure everybody finds a job, whether that's through me or not. I want to make sure that our communities are employed because the more people that are employed, the better off our world is.
Yeah.
And so that's a free service I offer. On the client side, it's that HR project based consultancy. So it's less of like, let me infiltrate your whole organization, but what projects don't you have time for? And I'll take those on for you. Or what projects don't you like? And I'll take those ones on for you too. And then recruiting, whether it's specialized or whether you need processes and stuff built in your internal organization, or helping you to understand how you're in your own way in terms of recruiting talent, because that happens a lot within organizations.
That is a lot. You have a lot of spinning plates.
Yes, I do, but I love all of them.
Do you have a favorite?
That's a hard question. I've always really loved recruitment. I was in that before I was in HR. So I think for me, that's always been sort of my landing spot. I come back to it as my anchor. But I do love HR, and there's a lot of pieces I love about it. But I always found that every role that didn't include recruitment, I didn't feel as fulfilled. So that
So
recruitment piece.
how did you land there?
Well, it was very untraditional, as I think most people in HR and recruiting generally have it. And I will say that because you don't dream of being a recruiter or being in HR one day, or at least you didn't when I was
Right.
growing up. I went to school for communications with a minor in writing. I was going to be a sports photojournalist. That was always the plan. I'm going to work in sports and, be a photojournalist. And I got this great opportunity to work with the Boston Bruins, which was incredible.
Wow.
Um, and I loved it, and I would never trade that for the world. We went to a Stanley Cup. It was the most incredible experience in my life. But it taught me I didn't want to be a sports photojournalist because I didn't want to have my life controlled by sort of another entity, right? You have to travel all the time. You have to be
Yeah.
there when they make trades. And I was like, that's not what I want for myself. So I went and worked for a newspaper, and it was a weekly newspaper. So we were doing feature pieces and fluff pieces and things like that. And, I was like, what are my skills that I can, like, I went to a staffing agency because I was like, I want to do something different, but I don't know how to go about finding a position that's similar to recruitment in my skills, but is different, right? And so they were like, be a recruiter. And looking back on it now, it never dawned on me how that made sense. But thinking about it now, it was like, and then as a reporter, I was interviewing people, finding out their story, and then telling their story in a compelling way to the masses, right?
Yeah.
And as a recruiter, right, I'm doing an interview, finding out people's story, gathering it, and creating a compelling story for hiring managers and
Yeah.
organizations. So it went really well together. At the time, I didn't know that. But that's how I found recruiting, and I did agency recruiting and then moved into HR.
Wow. Hey, Carla. Hi, everybody else logging in. Hey, Alex. So I coach a couple executives right now who are really struggling with the layoffs.
Mhm.
What are you finding in that arena?
Well, I think layoffs, we need to improve how we perform layoffs, right? I understand that, some organizations sort of overplan and they maybe under deliver, or things happen and you get into the situation where you have to lay off people. But there
Yeah.
needs to be improvement. And so what I mean by that is, you know, right now individuals are finding out because their company removes their access, right? They just are like, they get to their email and it's gone. But that's not how you should communicate with people, even when you're letting them go, that that's their last experience with you,
Yeah.
right? So I'm a firm believer that if you're laying people off, there should be a conversation that happens before with them that says, we have these 25 open positions, because in most cases, companies that lay off still have open
Open
positions, right?
positions. Yeah.
So we're gonna lay you off. Here are these open positions. Are any of these of interest to you? Because we would love to have you, fill over in one of these. If
Yeah.
not, have the CEO or the leaders of the organization call the competitors that they know and network with and say, we have these people we're laying off that need jobs. Can we send them over to you during our working hours and they can interview? Right? Like, do it right, because those people later will want to come back and work for you when they've gained some more knowledge and when you're doing better and can take on more people.
Yeah. Okay, I do it better is I want that to be somehow like a motto on the back of your screen, do it better, because both of the female executives that I'm working with, one's gone through three layoffs, 3 cycles of layoffs since probably October of last year, the other one too, and for the most part, they're not even notified until it happens. So, they lead a team and their teams are shrinking, but they don't know. Anyway, my heart breaks for anybody going through that right
Mhm.
now. And I'm sure you see it a lot more than I see it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and honestly, it shouldn't be a secret. There's absolutely no reason for it. I mean, I can tell you, being in HR, there were times I knew a year in advance we were going to lay people off, and we
Yeah.
didn't tell them until, 4 to 6 months before it happened. There's
Yeah.
no reason for that.
Yeah.
The only thing people can come up with is then they won't stay. Well,
Yeah.
give them a reason to stay. Tell them why you need them.
Yeah.
If we're being transparent and communicative with people, they're receptive to that. It's when you
Yeah.
start to try to hide things from them that then they start to become disengaged.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just a little bit of a switch. Before we went live, you're telling me all the things you've accomplished: podcasts, ebooks, all kinds of stuff. So what do you want to share, and how did you end up doing all these wonderful things?
Well, I'm a person that doesn't sit still. As you can tell from all the things I do, I am not good at sitting still and just waiting for things to happen. I
Yeah.
probably sleep very little. Um, so, in terms of that, right, I always want to be on the move and doing something. And so for me, I knew I wanted to start a podcast. I love public speaking. It's probably something people don't say very often. Love public speaking. That's when I feel
Yeah.
like I'm in my element. I perform poetry, so that's always been part of who I was. And so, um, wanted to do that and just educate people and improve the landscape of work. And then the newsletter really just went, simultaneously with that. The ebook was funny. I actually got reached out to by a publishing company on LinkedIn, and I thought it was a scam at first, because I'm like, who reaches out to me? And it's like, we want you to write a book, an ebook,
Yeah.
which I love to write and I love HR. And they're like, and you can pick any HR topic you want and we'll pay you and it costs you nothing. I was like, time out. Like, this is not
Right.
real.
What's the catch?
And so, I mean, right, I only get a percentage of the sales, which is fine. But like,
Yeah.
I loved writing this book. I loved working with the team at Book Boom Learning. They were incredible and fantastic. And so the ebook is called The Secret Formula to Hiring Talent, ... It's not so secret. And so it was really fun to write. And it was all about, how you go to your HR and recruiting teams and you're like, how do we find this out of the box way of hiring talent, when that's really not what it takes. It's not an out of the box approach. It's right there in front of you. You just got to dig deeper.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. All right. So we share stories it's like, all of our chapters that we've written, right? Some of them we choose to write, some of the chapters happen to us, right? And we have to get through them. Anything specific you want to share that will impact or spark some conversation, right? You're in the driver's seat.
Well, I mean, I'll say, even as somebody who's in recruiting and in HR, I applied before I started my company. I applied to over 200 jobs within a 6 month period.
Wow.
6 month period. And every time I got an interview, the companies were like, "We love your resume. We thought you interviewed really well, but we're not selecting you." Right. And it was always so frustrating because I'm like, how do I fix that problem? Right. I can't fix those things.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was always, um, that was always a challenge. And I kept trying to say, the universe has a plan for me that I can't see. The
Right.
universe knows something I don't, because this doesn't make any sense otherwise.
Yep.
And so it was redirecting me without me actually knowing it. I took a role sort of out of desperation, and then quickly was like, this was not the right fit. And then as I was reassessing what I wanted to do, I kept finding that none of the jobs that I was applying to were really inclusionary of all the things that I wanted to do in a role. Right. Part of what I wanted to do in terms of recruitment was I wanted to involve the community more. So one of the things I'm passionate about is using your community and upskilling them in order to build a pipeline of talent. And so in doing that, right, none of the companies I applied to, none of the positions I applied to, they were all not willing to do it.
Hmm.
And so I was like, how do I make this happen, but globally, or, across the board, right? And
Right.
I was like, I have to open my own business. And I was still teetering on the fence of it. And I heard this podcast from a former actor that I watched on TV. And he used this Indiana Jones like reference, which I've never seen the movie. So sorry to anybody who's an Indiana Jones fan. But he talked about how in the movie, Indiana Jones is running away from this rolling boulder, right? And he gets to this ledge and there's no bridge to cross. But
Right.
he
You got to
just steps
jump.
off, but he just steps off the ledge and he trusts that something there is going to catch him.
Yep.
And for me, like, that was the thing I needed. And I was like, I have to step off the ledge and just trust that whatever is there is going to catch me. And that's how A People Partner was born, because I just had to have blind faith.
Right.
And so, for anybody out there who's job seeking and it's just not like, you just feel like, I don't know what else to do. I feel like I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing and nothing's falling in line. It's hard to see when you're in it, but the universe probably has a plan for you. And honestly, those jobs that you're applying to probably wouldn't have made you happy in the long run.
Right.
Right? I look
So
back at some of the things I interviewed for, and they were like, I was like, oh, I would not have been happy doing that job or in that company, right? But I didn't realize that at the time.
So what I admire, and I want to stop here for a second because you said it, and then and again, we aren't normally wired to compliment ourselves, right? So I'm going to compliment you, and I want to know how you got there, because you and I are similar in this. I tend to leap, like so. Funny story. I'm not going to go into the story, but I am a leaper. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to leap. I'm going to do this, and I'll figure it out on the way down. Right? Drove my ex crazy. It's like, but Tanya, what about this? And what about the budget? And what about, did we need to talk to some more people? And he'd have all these buts, right? And I'm already way gone and already leapt, right? So that takes courage. I'm not going to say that every time I took that grand leap that I landed well. However, most of the time I have, right? So that is kind of like a courageous, brave Wonder Woman kind of genetic makeup, right? Where did you learn it? I know where I learned mine. Where did you get yours?
I think growing up, I grew up with an older brother on a street of all boys. I was constantly surrounded by men, and I was always proving myself and having to be courageous and, like being stronger than I needed to be, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that it could be part of that. I also was pretty calculated a lot of times. I never really was somebody that was like, I'm going to take a big risk and I'm going to do this. But I think I was at a point in my life, and we had sort of chatted a little bit about this. I'd gone through a lot of changes in my life recently where a few years back, probably 4 or 5 years now, I went through a large breakup after
Right.
dating somebody for almost a decade. And I had been to the point where I was reinventing myself. I've been dealing with depression and anxiety, and I was starting to reinvent this person, right? And as part of my reinvention, it was like, I need to do things that make me a little uncomfortable, right? I need to
Right.
do things that maybe I wouldn't normally do. And so it was like, when this opportunity came up, I was like, that's it. Like, I'm just doing it. And nobody in my family had ever really started a business before. So I didn't have anybody to lean on. I had a neighbor that started her own business, so I could, at least go there. But it was like, foreign for me to do this, but it just felt so right the whole time that I was
Yeah.
like, I can't shake this feeling of like, this is what feels the most right out of everything I've been doing.
Well, I love that you were, living in alignment with what was going to bring you joy, what you thought would bring you joy. And I heard you say it. Of course, I'm a coach, right? So I love it. I love getting my clients out of their comfort zones,
Mhm.
right? That's where the growth is. That's where we move and get that needle unstuck. So you did it all on your own. I don't know how much help you had. You said you didn't have a lot of family members. So for me, a lot of that leap of faith, the courage, the bravery came from my grandparents who came
Mm.
from another country, didn't speak English, all those kind of things that I look back on what they did to make their lives better and obviously their children and grandchildren's lives better. Um, so I admire it in anybody. And I always like to gift people that courage that they can do it. And it sounds like you do too. Like you like to share like courage and bravery, right? Making the
Mhm.
world better.
I do, and
I
one
do.
of the things I do with my job seekers, there are people I work with that are transitioning careers, or they come to me and they're like, "I don't know what I wanna do with my life, like, I have
Yeah,
no idea." And I just sit with them and I'm like, "What do you like to do? What interests you? What do you feel like, when you do it, what makes you happy? What lights you up?" Right?
right.
And I ask those questions and I'm like, "I'm gonna type those things into LinkedIn and we're gonna see what jobs pop up for you." Right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm not putting them through an assessment, I'm not putting them through a test. It's literally just like, let's chat and find out what you love. And then there's
right.
a job out there for you. I know there is. So
Yeah.
let's find it.
Yes. And I'm hoping I have somebody that I talked to today. So if she's not on listening, I don't see her. I am definitely sending her your way. And I like Constance said it's called a leap of faith. Yes, I love, taking a leap of faith is not always easy, right? And we got to work through the fear, do it anyway. All kinds of sayings out there and jingles about going through fear. And Susanna, oh my gosh, talk about a brave human out of the box, doesn't even believe there's boxes, being authentic. So I'm so honored that Susanna's here. She's going to be a guest soon. And I kind of did a faux pas the other day on LinkedIn saying, "Oh, I need you to be a guest again." And she's like, "I've never been a guest," but she's here so often. I just thought she was a guest. So I'm sorry, Susanna, but I'm glad that you are going to be,
Mhm.
because there is a human right here that is, you know, getting out of comfort zones and not even trying to pretend there is a box there to keep her in. So it's awesome. Very awesome.
Exactly.
Anybody have any questions? Please feel free to, I'm keeping an eye on the chat for us. So going forward, I mean, you have a business, right? So
Mhm.
I don't know if there is a new chapter. However, your generation is a lot younger than my generation, and you have a lot of time going forward. So is there a next chapter, something that you want in the horizon?
So as a writer, I write novels on the side, right? That's one of the things I do when I'm still not sleeping. Um, and so I'm somebody who always has a lot of chapters lined up, ready to go. So
Yeah.
the next chapter for A People Partner, there's a couple of them. So it's going to be hiring people on my team to hopefully, live our values and provide the similar type of support so that I can do more speaking engagements and bring light to what we do here. Um, you know, from that, right, the next chapter, really the larger chapter for A People Partner, is I want to open community resource centers across the US that focus on um, upskilling communities. And so they would be free for individuals in the community to come to, and they would get free Wi Fi access, free computer access. And we would go to the local employers and say, what skills, softwares, systems do you need them to know? And then we would teach them those things, from how to turn on my computer, how to use Excel, how to do VLOOKUPs, right? Whatever it is that the community needs, and consistently grow that pipeline of talent for the local employers
That's
and
awesome.
promote then the open jobs. And so that's one of the bigger chapters. And then I have two more companies I want to start after this, but we're going to focus on this one for now.
Okay. So Constance has a question. What keeps you motivated? What motivates you to keep you going?
It's being there for other people, right? Really helping to change the landscape of job seeking and employment. And, there's so much broken in the landscape of companies and HR and recruitment and job seeking, right? I mean, that whole process is frustrating and broken and annoying. And if I can be one person who can help start to turn the tide on that, that would be incredible, right? Because we need change, and we're calling for it. That's one of the things. The other thing is being a female CEO. I'm passionate about giving that tool to other women who want to be CEOs, who never even dreamed that to be possible, and say,
Yeah.
there's somebody out there doing it, and I can be a CEO too, and I can start my business when I didn't think that was ever something I could do.
Right. So going forward with your chapter, I want to say hey to Gretchen, because another great contact, right? As we're talking about recruiting and hiring and how to do it better. And now we're kind of jumping into being CEOs. Great contact. So if you don't know Gretchen, great contact to have. I know Gretchen went live today. So if you want to put in the chat, how did it go? She's went live on, I think, what's it called? 344. Oh my gosh, I am gonna probably blunder it because Gretchen, you probably don't know, but I have a sinus infection. So Dayquil and hot tea has been my friend today. So my brain's not working on full load. I told Alyssa she's gonna be carrying the show. But anyway, great contact. So however, so I know I want to honor time, and so I'm looking at the time. You are a phenomenal role model. You're out there doing good things out into the world. However, and you seem so positive, but there are times you haven't been, right? So do you want to share a little bit about that or not?
Yeah, I'll share it. I mean, as I mentioned, I went through a major breakup, right? And that put me in this place of depression and anxiety. And I never knew those worlds. I mean, I was always a bubbly, outgoing person, and hadn't really ever experienced depression before, and had never been to therapy, right? And I love therapy. I'm a big proponent. I'm like, if you're not in therapy, go have therapy. Like, it's the best
Yeah.
thing ever. And I see a therapist once a week, and I love it. Like, that's the thing that I'm like always telling people that they should do. But for me, right, I had to learn how to cope with depression and how to cope with anxiety. And one of the things I had to retrain my brain was like, I am not depressed. I am not anxious. It is not me. It is something I have, and I cope with, and that I deal with. But similar to when we have, right, a knee pain, we don't say I am knee pain. We say I
Right.
have knee pain. I have depression. I have anxiety. I am not depressed and anxious. Um, and so learning how to change my mindset, in addition to that, I learned coping mechanisms. I had to learn that writing was the thing that made me feel free, that made me feel the best. And so when I was feeling low, I would do one of two things. I would either turn on the TV and watch shows to make me feel better. And although people might say that's not good for your depression, that world, being in an alternate world helped me in that point, because it also got my creative juices going, that as soon as I turned on the TV and started getting into a show, I would then immediately be like, I need to write. I need to get into a book. I need to write a poem. I need to do something. And so for me, writing has always been the place I go to when I feel the worst. And it always helps me sort of get out of whatever I'm dealing with. Um, I also got dogs. I have 5 dogs, so that
I can
obviously
hear
has
them.
helped. That obviously has helped. Not gonna lie there, but but definitely the writing is sort of what pulls me back. But that depression and anxiety, I had been living with anxiety longer than I knew I had been, and so I looked back on some of the things that had happened, situations I had been in my life, and I was like, wow, that was my anxiety, but I never would have known that, and I couldn't control it then. But now I can control it in the sense that I can feel when I'm going to have a breakdown a week before I'm going to have it. And I can actually pull myself out of a spiral as I'm
Right.
spiraling, which is something that takes a lot of understanding in yourself. When I talk to my therapist, she's like, the fact that you can do that means that you're very in tune with yourself, and you're listening
Right.
to what's going on. And so, I've learned that I grew up with all boys again. So it was hard to, you couldn't cry. You couldn't admit when you're in
Right. You
pain.
weren't feeling your feelings around your brothers.
Or my brother or his friends or all my neighbors that
Right.
were boys. It's like you couldn't do that. But now it's like I'm embracing that like vulnerability of like it's okay to feel that way. And that doesn't mean I'm weak. It actually means I'm
No.
strong because I'm letting those feelings release rather than trying to hold them in.
Right. No, yes. I'm so glad you said that. Working through your feelings to get to the other side versus going anyway up, around, in circles, but actually working through them. And the self-awareness is a muscle that humans as we grow muscles of self-awareness, if it's journaling, affirmations, for me, it's journaling, long walks on the beach. I'm blessed to live next, so close to the ocean where I can go for long walks. I know when I start to feel depressed, lonely, living alone through COVID, I went to the beach a lot and there's nobody there, but it was a great healing for me. So to hear you share what you do and the self-awareness and the muscle that you've grown. And I love how you also say, the depression isn't who you are. Like my knee pain is not who I am. Right.
Doesn't define me, but I have to
Yeah.
cope with it and we have to coexist together. Right. But
Yeah.
it is not who I am.
Right.
And I will also say that this person that I've become, right, that is more, I'll say, vulnerable and self-aware and compassionate, right? What that does is it allows me to sit in more of an empathy seat. I sit in that seat more often of, when somebody comes to me, my immediate response is, what's going on with them and how can I help them? Right. Even if we disagree, we could be on total opposite sides of the spectrum, but
Yep.
I need to understand why they feel the way that they feel. I can never walk in their shoes because I will never be them. But at least if I can understand why they feel the way that they feel, right, I can start to say, listen, like I get it and I'm here to help you and I'm happy, I'm happy to do that. So
Yeah.
I believe in providing empathy at the forefront of everything. And I think my self awareness is a muscle that I've developed that helps me get there because being empathetic is not the easy choice.
No.
We're quick to be defensive or judgmental, right? That's just how we're wired as people. But leading from a place of empathy takes practice. It's a skill you
Yeah.
have to develop.
Yeah. Yes. And, I didn't grow up with all brothers. However, there are people in my life that didn't encourage me to feel my feelings, right? It's like trying to put your big girl panties on and deal with it. Go to
Mhm.
school, go whatever, right? And so it took, I was probably in my mid 20s, late 20s when I saw a therapist and it helped me with, sit down and feel your feelings,
Mhm.
right? And journal them, talk, actually sit there and close your eyes, put your hands on your heart and feel your feelings. And I'd cry, that was just so weird,
Yep.
so glad you went
And
through
now
that.
I just let myself cry. I'm like, I know it's coming. Just let it happen. And like,
Yep.
that's a release. Once I do it, it's like that anxiety I've been building releases and it's just gone.
Yep. Yes. And tears have so much to say
Hmm.
if we listen.
Yep,
Yeah.
they do.
They do. All right. Well, you're amazing and you're a role model and
Thank you.
inspirational. And anything we can do to help you with your next chapter, let us know. We've got Chris. Hey, Chris. Hey, Teresa, Constance, and, Gretchen and Rachel. We're all here, because we want to help each other. So that's what we're here for, right? And I love that you can share your stories and continue to share your stories. And I wish you the best with your next chapter.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
if anybody needs me, I'm always happy to lend them an ear. No matter what they're going through, I'm here.
Yeah. Well, there is a lot going on out there in the HR world or recruiting world. Like we said in the beginning of What's Your Story show today, so many people are getting laid off and in a not a really nice way.
Mhm.
And they need compassion. So
Mhm.
I am sending somebody your way,
Yeah, and
because
I've
it
actually said that
is.
to people that, if you were laid off and you're not even ready to job search, I'm not going to force you, but you can just call me up and say, I need to
Yeah.
vent to you. And you could literally vent to me and hang up, and that's okay. Right.
Yeah.
I'll be here to listen to you because as an HR professional, I did that with employees. They would come to my office, they would share what they were dealing with, and then they'd leave. Right. And
Yeah.
that's also sort of why, and I'll joke, but it's not necessarily a joke, but like I would say the HR people need therapists because we take on everybody, we take in all
Yep.
that
You
stuff that
do.
everybody gives us,
Yep.
and then we don't take it anywhere with us, right? So we have to
Yep.
like then go to therapy. But
Yeah.
you know, trying to better the community, and if anybody needs anything, I'm always happy to be
Yep.
here.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for everybody who came on today to support What's Your Story and us, and hope to see you next week. Reach out, and I apologize. I'm sitting here going, because I know that I half brain with Dayquil sinus infection. So thank you for that. And thank you, Alyssa, for carrying the show today.
Thank you. Anytime. You let me know.
I will. Thank you. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you for coming on.
Bye.
Bye.